Welcome to the latest episode of PetrolPlaza Talks. Thank you all for joining. Today we're going to be talking about smart forecourts and convenience stores. As we know, with the development of technologies and particularly at service stations with a switch from traditional fuel selling stores to places that offer multi-energy and multiple services, fresh food, and plenty of convenience. There's a large part of technology that goes into that, and where retailers say that instead of serving cars, now they serve individuals. So today we're going to explore a few examples of that and where the trends are going. With us, we have Sebastian Becker, the Division Manager for Wholesale and Logistics at Migrolino. Migrolino is a Swiss retailer with around 400 stores in train stations, petrol stations, and shopping centers. They're very innovative and they can compete with many retailers around the world. We also have Sabine Benoit. She's a professor at Surrey and a convenience store expert. She's worked a lot next to Leckerland, the German wholesaler. We also have Adrian Felton, Chief Technology Officer at TLM Technologies from the UK, to give us a better insight into the back end of technology and some of the details around that. So with that, say hello to everyone. For those watching, you can send your questions to the Q&A and I'll try to include as many of them as possible. Well, welcome Sabine, and thank you Sebastian and Adrian for being here. We'll start with just a pretty overall general question, and is how, we're going to start with Adrian. How do you think convenience stores and forecourts are becoming smarter?
I think you touched on it earlier in your opening statement, which is they are introducing more offers and services, expanding their offers and services at their store outside of just fuel retailing. Certainly their convenience offer in the last couple of years, especially in the UK, has got a lot better, but they're now going outside of that. And with that comes their challenges. You know, all of these various systems that provide these offers or services running standalone, very, very time consuming. So the overall convenience store and petrol stations have to become smarter to be able to manage all of the offers to make it convenient for the end consumer.
Mm-hmm. Sabine, you've done research all around the world, and what do you see? And right now, what makes them smart compared to, let's say, 10 years ago?
So one of the things is that we need to think about, what does smart mean? And from the academic perspective, it means that there's a physical component, let's say some sort of physical technology, a sensor or something like that. Then there's connectivity. So this product being connected to the web, or if we have Bluetooth. And what we define as smart is that there's an intelligence component. And I think the big difference between the technology 10 years ago and the technology today is that intelligence component. So, if you look at the price tags, looking 20, 30 years back, it was a little sticker on a product. And then it became something on the shelf. And then it became something that was digitized, that was sort of manually changed. And now it suddenly becomes something that changes over the course of the day. And that is when this technology components comes in, that AI or artificial intelligence, some algorithm sort of changes this on an automatic base. And this is what, from the academic perspective, that intelligence component is what makes it smart and what differentiates it from connected products that we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, totally normal already.
Yeah, that's fascinating, Sabine. Sebastian, do you want to add anything before we go into some of Migrolino's latest innovations?
Oh, I think that touched quite well on how we perceive convenience stores and forecourts becoming smarter. It's kind of an evolution. Earlier, it used to be put products in shelf, as Sabine just said, and nowadays it's get customers in the store via communication. So for us to make a C-store more, or to make a C-store smarter, includes digitalization of customer interaction. That's mainly how we understand it.
Mm-hmm. So if you want, Sebastian, you can give us a bit of a few examples of what is Migrolino now doing, and kind of some of the latest innovations that they're presenting.
Great. Is it too loud with the commentator in the train? Then I just take a few seconds pause.
I think it's okay.
He just managed to finish. Okay. So what we see here is our 3 different formats that we pursue in our franchising model. Left bottom is our Migrolino franchising that we have launched with 3 partners in Switzerland, with Shell, Soca, and Migros. And it is our classic convenience format that we have, where we define the subcategories of the format, 5 in total. So we distinguish between classic format, fresh format, and nightlife format, where we engage more in alcohol and beers. So our classic format that serves sales space from 80 to, let's say, 150 square meters. And on the top, we see our newest format that we called Mio. Mio is a format that we now bring into the market for smaller sales floor sizes. So with this format, we can go down to almost 40 square meters. And where the maximum range for this concept is at around 80 square meters sales floor. Where we also have a different mindset with regards to the category management that we do. So with the Mio, we concentrate more on ready to go and ready to eat. And with the Migrolino Classic, we engage in a kind of, in German, to provide daily groceries to people that they don't need to go to supermarket and hypermarkets. We see our fully automated picking station, where we are at the moment able to outline 500 SKUs, and we are just about to do another evolution that goes up to 800 SKUs. It is a 24/7 availability. We launched one pilot together with Tesla. This is actually the original picture from the point where we put it. It's a Tesla supercharging station in Switzerland at a motorway, and this is a clear pilot for us. So we are getting informations of how to align assortments and how to define price sensitivity that customers have. And the start of this was really way under our expectations, let's say like this. And the second wave of the lockdown in Switzerland that kicked in around December increased sales and customer traffic quite a lot. So we were almost unhappy with the development, and then we saw that from December on, we had a great impact in sales, and we are planning on doing some more pilots now. So these are formats that we pursue in the market at the moment.
Yeah, that's great insight, Sebastian. Thank you very much. Obviously the automated convenience store is very interesting. Also, being at a Tesla charging station, also very fitting to the conversation. Sabine, have you seen many models like the automated shop? I've seen many retailers around the world kind of going to that model.
So I'm currently running a study on unmanned stores, and I found over 40 different concepts, and it's almost, I would say, a moving target, because there's a new one every month, if not every 2 weeks. So extremely interesting topic in my view. And of course, I've seen the one from Migrolino, and I realized the combination with Tesla, and they're different types. So we have walk-in vending, we have the pickup stations. So a pickup station, I would categorize the Migrolino or the Migros store. Then we have walk-in vending, which is basically sort of, a store because you can walk in, but then you have vending machines where every single product is behind a bar. And then we have all sorts of others where it's a community store, like with an employer or in a fitness environment, something like that, where people have a connection to each other. And then you have the totally anonymous format. So it's really interesting, and I can see a lot of almost all big retailers in the world are trialing something around that format. Highly interesting, but they're all very different when you look into detail into how they access the store, what the payment is, and so forth. So really interesting.
Yeah, and later on I'll show a few other examples, and so we can see some other how retailers do it. Adrian, as a service provider, it must be quite challenging to be able to make this a real option in some cases. Well, what do you see as the biggest challenges when kind of carrying out these challenging concepts?
I think the biggest challenges we face looking at our customer base in the UK is not necessarily the concepts, it's the amount of providers that are trying to get into that space, and therefore the kind of myriad of interfaces and different technologies that we would have to work with to interface to all of these systems, and they're new emerging technologies, so there's no standards around. If we look back to the forecourt sector and payment sector, they're quite mature, so we have standards that we can work to, which makes that a lot easier. But yeah, the challenges are every customer wants to pick a different service provider, and every service provider thinks their way of doing things is the best, although their end goal is all the same. And that's very difficult to work with when you're trying to interface your systems. Seeing our systems are quite key, especially for the smaller retailers that don't have their big back-end central systems, and they're expecting everything to go through our products. So we spend a lot of time trying to encourage people down certain routes, or jumping on the back of the standards body wherever possible.
Yeah. A key part of convenience stores and petrol stations going forward is obviously the part of payment, which Sabine mentioned before, and it obviously advances at different speeds depending on the geographical area. We've seen Amazon announce payments by hand with hand recognizer. We see some gas stations already, I think it's in Poland, that accept cryptocurrencies. So Sabine, from your side, what are some of the highlights that you're seeing, and what are the clear trends that everyone seems to be going along with?
So one of the things I would like to mention is that many people out there that I speak to, they consider technology as something tangible. So it needs to be something that they can put in the store. So I realized that Adrian was talking of their systems. So that is that is a view that from our perspective in academia is much more favorable. So you see the product or whatever tangible technology there is as a service, as a vehicle to provide services. If you think of, the photocopy machine, it used to be sold as, here's your photocopy machine, and then you wouldn't have any contact with the person or with that company anymore. And 10 years later, that photocopy machine would break. So nowadays, and I'm coming to your question and the payment in a second, sorry. What we call that servitization. So the tangible technology is upped with services. So and that makes, and I really encourage people to not only think about technology as in something tangible, but technology as in services. And then, payment is not only the new till or something like that, but that can also be an app where people self-scan with their app and then use certain services. And that's also relevant for other areas, like what you mentioned with loyalty. So really don't see technology as in something necessarily tangible, because there's a lot of e-services out there that are very relevant to up the game of a forecourt store.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's more about the how to apply the service than the actual technology itself. Sebastian, maybe you want to give us a few examples of some of the innovations that Migrolino is bringing around, or how you view this kind of payment loyalty section?
Yeah, so we are quite deep in those technologies, and we try to be very close to the new innovations. Take as an example the fully automated Pygmy that we have now piloted. Currently, we are able to sell tobacco products along with the fresh products and everything else. And we are now together with an agency programming Face ID, so that we can also sell alcohol. So there is a special law in Switzerland where you need to make sure that you do not sell alcohol to a person that has already some issues, maybe with alcohol. So we try to use the technology there to increase that. What we surely have is all the wireless payments and all the twins and so on for our stationary formats. But we did not engage in Bitcoins yet. As Migros, we do for the supermarkets and for our online platforms, but not in our convenience channel at this point in time.
Yeah, that's interesting. So Adrian, yes, as the kind of as a system provider, what kind of requests are you getting from most of your clients, and where do you see the direction going?
Well, we're certainly not seeing Bitcoin payments or necessarily Face ID yet, although people are talking about it. But again, from a technology point of view, and to touch on some things that have been said, it's a service. So if a service can exist on the back of an existing interface, so face recognition via an additional Apple service on your smartphone using an existing contactless technology, which is the infrastructure is in every single store, then that certainly makes it easier from a system provider. I go back to what I said about interfaces, using a standard interface to do that with contactless technology, and it's just an additional service on an app, and then that removes the system provider and the retailer, especially looking at security, because they're going over an existing secure approved interface. So any trend around that, whether it be fingerprint, facial recognition, whatever you can do with an existing smart device over an existing technology, then that's where we'll see it, or that's certainly where I see it going at the moment.
Yeah.
If I may add, may I add something to this point?
Go for it.
Because I think, being German, living in the UK, I need to mention that, the differences when you look at cultural issues with payment are absolutely enormous. So we just conducted a study, as I said, about these unmanned stores, and for this I had various expert interviews, and here sharing your contactless payment with your debit card or credit card is absolutely, for the tube, you even do this for getting on the bus, it's absolutely no issue. So in the German space, it was a real issue. People had massive hesitations to share their bank data when entering an unmanned store. And interesting sort of anecdote from an expert interviews with one of these unmanned stores that was a walk-in vending. I asked for the share of cash, non-cash, and so the expert said 80%. And I thought, oh, okay, so it's above average. And he said, no, 80% cash, 20% cashless. And I just almost fell off my chair, because I thought, wow, this is so really there are big cultural differences when it comes to cashless payments and the willingness of people to share and to share this. And one interesting point that we know from research is, and think about this as a reason, potentially, I can't prove this, but we know that there's more pain paying cash than contactless, because basically you give away something and you're not getting it back with cash. You give that, you give that amount of money and you're not getting it back. If you pay with credit or debit card, you're giving something to the cashier and you get it back. That's already a little bit less pain. But cashless or contactless is just sort of, you tap it, and the more you're giving away, the more pain it is. And this is my only sort of fun explanation of why Germans want to have some kind of control over their spendings and really feel that it goes away, because the more contactless it is, the less you feel it going away, and the more you spend. That's what we know from research. Anyway, sorry, I needed to mention that because my perspective on these two countries is really showing the difference is so apparent.
It is a great point. It's a great point. And after living in Germany, I definitely agree with the cash obsession of Germany. But also, I mean, there's an element of the trying to preserve the privacy, which is very interesting. Obviously, we know Angela Merkel's been quite strong about privacy laws. And will that be a limitation for some of these technologies regarding to facial recognition payments, for example, Sebastian, as you were mentioning, or these kind of things? Someone was asking if existing infrastructure will be an inhibitor for innovation, but it's also, will new laws be an inhibitor for innovation?
Well, I think just to kind of repeat a point I made earlier, again, if you're using existing technology like your smartphone, where you're already unlocking your phone with your facial recognition or unlocking it with your fingerprint, and then that is also being used in the same way to go through security before you pay with your phone, I think that's where that does reduce that barrier to innovation, because it's already accepted. But if I was to put a fingerprint reader, which we have done in the past, or a camera for facial recognition that was not a, let's say, a known branded product above a register in a store, and then I think that is, people wouldn't accept that. That is a barrier.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, so I'd like to get into some of the other examples we have.
Maybe one point, yeah. Oscar.
Go for it.
Just in addition to Sabine's point, I think that's a really important thing. So the cultural background, or the culture as it is. And I would just like to make an addition. Then the next step is, what is my buyer base? Because we see that millennials and Generation Z, although maybe being German, have much less pain with giving their data compared to baby boomers. So I think the comparison for Germany is absolutely correct, but we see that the younger generations, they don't take it as difficult as baby boomers would.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sebastian. So after sharing some of Migrolino's great examples, I was lucky enough to go to Switzerland for the NAC show a few years ago, and we did see some of their stores. I pulled up 4 examples of forecourts and convenience stores around the world, and I thought we could give some brief comments on them. So we got the autonomous C-store powered by AIFI, Sabine, was that be how you pronounce it? I think you had an interview with them not long ago, so maybe you can give some insights into AIFI. And then we got the Mobimart, which is a convenience store that is on demand and moves around. I think they had some pilot projects in China as well as in Scandinavia. Then we got the Neste station in Finland, which is one of the first to install Autofuel's robotic arm. So this could be to show how forecourts will be automated as well. And then lastly, we got Enox station, which they only unveiled a few days ago for Expo Dubai 2020, which is a fine piece of art and includes 3,800 LED lights that not only light it and make it look very attractive, but also they point the way for the cars to where to move around, and they've got some amazing technology there. So kind of based around these examples, Sabine, you want to go first on the which of these options is something realistic? We know that, for example, the Loop C-store that's in the Shell station in California, and then Mobi is more of a futuristic concept.
So in my view, the Mobimart, I mean, it has created a lot of attention around the world, but I don't think it's necessarily a really sustainable format that it moves around on a sort of minute by minute basis or hourly basis. So I can see these pop-up stores where, let's say, you would move it around maybe once per day or for the weekend, for during the week and so forth, but that you basically sit at home and get a Mobimart to just come around the corner like you would do now with a Deliveroo driver. I don't see this. I think that the security and this is, it's too expensive compared to just, you know, putting a container in different places. So, but the IFE concept is really, it's a technology provider that is partnering with various different retailers. And here, you know, so the Albert Heijn store at Schiphol Airport was from them, for example. A Carrefour concept, they just partnered with Wundermart in Netherlands as well. So I think this could be really, you know, successful. And you're right, we had the honor to talk to their one of their founders about the concept. And so they can basically, they provide the technology and let it be operated by a retailer.
Yeah. It's very interesting also going back to what both Sebastian and Sabine were saying of the culture of the places. I think AFI is it's an Asian company where obviously these concepts are very easier to pilot and people are more willing to give their data and to just test themselves with an autonomous shop and those kind of concepts. Adrian, you work with a lot of forecourt retailers as well. Do you think we'll end up seeing such automation in the forecourt area anytime soon?
Yes, I think I do. You know, we're seeing in Europe, starting in the UK, it's been coming for a while. You know, the unmanned station. The unmanned station then moved to completely unmanned with vending, and I think there's then going to be a next step, which is either a better offer or a closer to a manned convenience store. So I think that's something that retailers will explore in the near future based on their findings and feedback about going unmanned.
Yeah, because there's definitely an argument saying if we do have autonomous vehicles on the roads, will humans be doing the fueling for autonomous vehicles, or will they have their own autonomous stations? For the car wash sector, speaking to Tommy Car Wash Systems from the US, they were actually quite excited about the idea of autonomous vehicles. They feel it's going to be very good for their market, especially because of car sharing. You want your car to be cleaner, so they'll be cleaned more often. Sebastian, any ideas around these concepts?
Yeah, I think it's a great assembly of innovations that are on their way. What maybe to say that in addition, what we are sharing with our partners is the supercharging and the hydrogen fueling. That gives us challenges as C-store providers, because tomorrow we need to enable in our stores seating places where we can fit people to wait for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I just did a big mistake and went with an electric car to Germany from Zurich to Cologne and back. And it was one of my biggest mistakes I did, because it took me like 2 hours of charging on my way back. I nearly got divorced. My children almost killed me. And on top of that, we were unlucky to find gas stations with stores where we couldn't wait in the store itself. So I think this is something really critical that we are addressing in this point in time. And with regards to mobility formats, maybe it's a bit crazy, the Mobimart concept that is moving all the time. We were surprised in Japan when we went there for a visit that one of those things just passed us. We didn't know before. And we think that there's a fusion between a stationary, fully automated format and constantly moving, because the stationary, you can replace them as well. So I think there's two ways to that. Yeah, but the biggest challenge for us at the moment is to find answers in the store for the changing consumer habit.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we've treated, and I see this a lot when practitioners talk, manned versus unmanned. It really sounds as if it would be black and white. So what we've seen in the study, there are many gray shades. So there are concepts that have it unmanned during the night, so that at night you can access, but during the day there are people just like normal. There are concepts that cut off a certain area, so that only a certain area is unmanned. And so there's lots of variation in between these seemingly dichotomous manned versus unmanned. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah,
that's a great point, Sabine. That we are thinking in those three directions. So having a fully automated standalone that you put somewhere, or second option, include a manned shop next to it, or the option 3, include the infrastructure of the technology inside a store to have minimal demand on space, but nonetheless showing 500 SKUs. So those are, yeah, absolutely.
Every self-checkout technology is one step towards an unmanned store, because the customer, it's about the customer journey who's unmanned. It's not about the provider, back office. This is never going to be unmanned. There will always be people sort of replenishing and stuff. So it's about the customer journey, and therefore that either requires people contact or not, and therefore every installation of self-checkout is a step towards unmanned, in my view.
Yeah, those are both great points, Sebastian and Sabine. If we could move along to the next topic I was thinking, and it's kind of like the figure of the client, the role of the customer in the new retail world, and something Sebastian mentioned at the beginning. It's also the impact of this Generation Z on how retailers will create their value proposition, and how it'll bring the older generations to fit into Generation Z, or if it will be the other way around. But basically, we've seen that transition from an anonymous customer to a loyal individual. So kind of in that switch, how do you see things, Sabine?
So I think here we need to differentiate the type of forecourt store. So what Sebastian has just described is a typical highway. He's on his way from Cologne to Zurich, and that's connected to totally different needs that if I refuel my car around the corner. So I would say there are three types. It's inner city, it's the commuter forecourt, and so on big streets out in the city, and it's highway. We've talked a little bit about the mobility needs. In my view, the charging is really only very relevant income category for the highway stations. Because if you think about it, people charge their automobile at home, and then in the morning they go. So the morning trip will not be there won't be any charging. On the way back, usually somebody who has such a commute would not really buy an electric car, where every day on a commute, and in future it will be a question whether we still talk about every day in the office, need to come back. So these two, inner city and commuter forecourts, really is charging really going to be a big business for them? And I would say, I don't think so, because either you do it at home or you do it at your employer, but not at a petrol station. So that's not good news. So, but I think if we think about the role of the consumer in a forecourt retailing, in my view, and I'm observing the sector for quite a while, 30, 40 years back, the car was in the focus. So everything, was about the car. Then they gradually moved towards, the driver being in the focus. Then they gradually moved towards all the passengers in the car being in the focus. And I think for these inner city and commuter forecourts, they need to become part of their community. So, that's their chance in future to really make a business. When more shifts towards charging. And then we are at the topic of, these forecourts being a service hub. And, we've had this topic for at least 10 years, people thinking about it. But what comes up is, well, an ATM maybe, or a post office, or lotto, or dry cleaning. I think the biggest chance for me would be to really connect the forecourt to other ecosystems. So for example, there are food waste apps where you go on and look at, so here in the UK, it's Too Good To Go, for example. You go on and look at who is selling food that is almost, or that would go on to waste, sort of, that's rolls and so forth. They have, or another is refill. You could have an app where people can look up where the next station is, where they can refill their water bottle. So here in the UK, you have 30,000 stations of this refill, and you have 300,000 app downloads for this refill app. So if you, and that's what I mean with, if the forecourt becomes the hub, a service hub, it's a really big opportunity for them to become part of these ecosystems of 300,000 people having downloaded that app where they can refill their bottle. And that's what I also meant, that technology is not only about the hardware. This is about software. This is about an app. This is connecting. And of course, you need to have a fill station for that bottle. But this is about sort of, engaging with people in a different way, offering more than just energy. And one more point, if I may. So I did a study in Germany again, sort of 3 years back, and at 10 different stations. And we asked, how often do these customers that were walking in and out the forecourt store, how often do you come to that station? And most of these customers were very steady customers. We had up to 87% of people saying, I come multiple times per month. So this idea of having a customer that is like Sebastian described, going from Cologne to Zurich, these are different stations. This is a different playground. The most stations, their playground is the community around them. And I would really, encourage them to shift from the driver or even the car towards becoming part of that community with delivery and being part of these sort of ecosystem of different app providers and all these different aspects that are huge opportunities in my view.
Yeah. Sebastian, you want to add to something? I know Sebastian was in a panel to represent millennials a few years ago in London, and you were supposed to speak about the difference of the millennial audience versus the normal one. So I'm sure you got some ideas to bring to this.
I don't know if my connection is good enough, because I get it's not that stable. I try. Otherwise, Oscar, you need to cut me. But
okay.
To go back to Sabine's point, it's perfectly clear that the customer need on a motorway is different from an inner city. The point of sale, clear. But for us as a convenience store provider, we have both in our portfolios. So we need to find types of challenges, and that was just an example to stretch on the need to provide place and space in the shop for the service hub. There we go into click and collect and delivery. So we have launched an app where we can provide at least the two of them. We missed out on doing that at the beginning of last year, and Corona helped us on the bicycle to increase the development speed that we had. And another thing, Sabine, that we try to do is, you mentioned to put the forecourt on the social map for its direct range of up to 2-3 kilometers, and we try to go in collaboration with other companies to provide kind of a pickup service for their orders that they can pick up at our stores, which we thought is a great idea. Customers loved it, and our franchisee partners hated it, because in fact they had like 20 to 30 customers a day entering the store, blocking the employees behind the cash zone, and just to get their parcel that they ordered, and they didn't even buy one single item in the shop. So but but I'm with you. For the inner city, we need to engage more with customers, and this is why we launched the app. We try to send to them promotions in the morning. Please come, pass by, get your coffee, get your bakery products, or even get your lunch for the office or at home. And so we use the app to get this communication done and to get the customers back, because convenience business is highly dependent on for the city stations to maintain your customer base, because it works. The way to your work is always the same, and either you are on that path or not. If you're on the path, you need to maintain those traffics every day. That's a challenge there.
Yeah, Adrian, from your, they've both mentioned how stations are bringing more services into there. From a technological point of view, how difficult is it to integrate all these different services when we talk about lockers, charging, and also kind of connecting to the customer thing with all that data that is provided to the retailer? What's kind of like the best way to handle all that?
Well, just to start with, we're seeing exactly what Sabine and Sebastian said. Lots of different apps coming in, different ways to pay. Starting off with self-checkout, going into scan using your own device, then scan and pay. So they don't have any interaction with the people in store. Wastage apps, and then I might see some offers on a wastage app, but I don't actually want to go to the store. I just want a service provider like Deliveroo to deliver it. All of the above, and then combining those apps with payment and loyalty, so something works out, how much loyalty they've got, what discounts, what money off they're going to get for being loyal customers. So we are certainly seeing all of that coming in, and that's really accelerated during the recent pandemic, where people want less contact with people in stores, which is all good. But that goes back to my earlier point. It presents difficulties from a technology provider, because every customer wants a different app. Every app uses its own technology, its own interface, and it's about, because it's in its infancy, there are no standards. But technology is helping. Interfacing is helping. The ways to do things is simplified. But there are still issues around supporting the myriad of providers that are in the market space at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So I want to take a second to encourage those watching to send your questions through. We've got 15 minutes left, so I'll try to include a couple if you feel like you want to know something else. So discussing all of this, and when you look at AI and forecourts and convenience stores, when you look at AI and retail, what can be the ceiling for this technology and for retailers and customers? Sabine, you spend a lot of time researching innovative concepts.
I think the ceiling for AI has long not come yet. So there's a book that I've recently read from former co-author. He said, let's take the robot out of the human. So, and that basically just means that everything that can be automated, every activity that today is done by a human that is really repetitive and always the same and so forth, will be in future done by automation. So that's really where it's heading. Whether this would be, and I'm coming back to the price tags that we had, whether this would be, changing the price tags on the shelves because it's a new month and you have new prices, this will all be automated at some point. And this is what is coming. Repetitive activities will vanish wherever they can. And then you need to sort of ask, what is the purpose of that technology in particular? And we see from the provider perspective, we see two purposes: enhance the customer experience, or two main purposes. There are others, of course. Enhance the customer experience, or cut costs, and enhance the customer experience, and then with this sort of leading to more sales. So, and here's the question: what is the sort of getting rid of repetitive activities is of mostly cutting costs, but there are also sort of activities out there, AI, that can lead to enhanced customer experience. So adapting the lighting to the weather and to the sort of mood, or for mood management, to change it during the day, or things like that, or using AI for the cooling, which would again be sort of cost related, so that if a door is open, you get an alarm and things like that. So I think AI is there to replace human intelligence, or to up human intelligence. And wherever we have these slightly repetitive aspects, I think there's a big potential for this to be upped in future by artificial intelligence services and algorithms that alarm us or something like this. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, no worries. Adrian, you want to add anything from your perspective?
Yeah, I totally agree with Sabine. It's sometimes people think of AI and they think it's incredibly complex and therefore is incredibly expensive. But a lot of the time it's very simple. It's about removing those repetitive tasks to either drive efficiency and cut costs, or to remove those mistakes that happen all the time. So there's a lot of simple AI that we can introduce into our systems to drive efficiency and remove mistakes, and ultimately driving down costs.
Yeah. Sebastian, I don't know if you want to add anything from your perspective or Migrolino's.
Yeah, I mean, using Sabine's definition, to have AI can be applied to a broad perspective of I mean, you can use AI to improve your performance in different points. When we discussed it in the company, we had topics like pricing, replenishment, and assortment. And we found that AI may have a really big impact in the way we manage our assortment. Since we do this very dynamically, we thought that, okay, let's use AI to have on a daily basis the optimum decision to place assortments in our stores. And we found that on a technological side, that's quite we are quite far, so we could do that. But we found that our inbound capabilities do not cope with the speed that we would then have in our stores. So I cannot currently change my inbound capabilities to the same speed. If we had this AI software that is telling us to put out Coca-Cola and put on something new in, we have inbound processes that need their time. And we cannot go on a bigger assortment to have this, because then we go in the wrong direction. We would do it primarily to cut costs, and if we need to increase the assortment we have centralized in our hub, then we go a different way. So we will have it, we will use it, but we need to ensure that inbound and outbound are.
That makes a lot of sense. Speaking to the to Enoch this morning, and also speaking to another retailer from Colombia, Terpel, the other day, they both had kind of like the end goal for them, or their dream was, in the case of Enoch, would be for somebody to drive up to the station, through license plate recognition, they could recognize the car. Then through the app, they could recognize the individual that's actually there. And they would pull up, and while somebody's fueling their car, because in Dubai they still have a lot of manned stations, the screen will say, would you like another latte? Because they would know that they have a latte every morning, that individual. In the case of Terpel, Alejandra was saying that her dream would be to turn up at the convenience store and Alexa telling her that she needs to remember to buy 2 bricks of milk and the bread. That connection between the store and the house. So kind of along those lines, is that where you think we're obviously heading, and will we be there sooner than we actually expect?
One thing that sprung into my mind when you were talking about this was Alexa is one thing, but so we already know that these 4 big ecosystems, around Apple, Microsoft, and so forth, they suck you in with one technology, and then it becomes wider and wider, and suddenly your whole life is somehow sucked into that ecosystem with watch and whatnot. I think we should expect something similar with cars and forecourt brands. So I've seen that's already a few years ago, a test between Jaguar and Shell, for example, that the Jaguar basically gives you a message of saying, by the way, in so and so many kilometers, not this sort of manual message that we used to have, the red light is saying you need to refuel, but it would say you need to refuel in the next 30 minutes. Here's the next Shell station, and because you're driving there with your car and the number plate, it will already be paid, and you will be. I think there will be partnerships between these car brands and particular petrol brands, so that this becomes a sort of similar ecosystem type, that Jaguar drivers don't really look at an Aral anymore or BP, because they're sucked into this sort of ecosystem of their car, and the car was going to tell you when to refuel and so forth. So that's one thought when it comes to this sort of where is it going, but I don't want to take away time. And then I saw that there's a question about in the chat about the future of AI and whether we're optimizing the gallon price, and where is this all going with regards to personalization. So we could technically, it would be absolutely no problem what you described. I drive on a forecourt, they recognize my face, they recognize my number plate, they say, hey Sabine, welcome back, you want your you want your latte or whatever. But I think here we will have barriers towards customer acceptance of this, because what I said before, in particular, some people find that scary. Mm-hmm. And we have acceptance with regards to regulation and data in the EU quite substantially. So what we see abroad in other countries sounds awesome from the customer experience perspective, but it wouldn't quite work here the same way. Here meaning Europe.
Here meaning Europe, yeah, that is very interesting. The cultural difference. Sebastian or Adrian, any last thoughts regarding this?
Well, yeah, I think Sabine's right, but the first scenario you explored, I don't think we're too far away from that. The mobile, the oil companies, have introduced their mobile payment apps on the forecourt. We've got loyalty, we've got all that within an app. So they know my car registration, they know when I'm at the pump, they know what I buy in the store and when I buy it, and they are at the point now where they can suggest back or remind me, it's midday and you're on your weekly commute to your customer, and you normally buy coffee, stop in at this station here. So I don't think we're very far away from that. And then, as Sabine said, oil companies and car manufacturers working together, so that app would naturally go into that car. Therefore, I already trust that because I'm happy for that app to do it. To then get to the point where I could have a generic app service and it's on all cars for all stations, that's when I'm sharing data outside of what I've already agreed. And at the moment, I think that's people's perceptions would limit that.
Mm-hmm. Sebastian?
Yeah, agree with Adrian. So we are at step one at the moment. So we managed to provide to our customers specific offers that match with their buying habits. And the second stage is the interaction of all those points, let's say energy providers together with car manufacturers, maybe in the future, surely, but then we would need to do the operations of the C-store, totally different. But yeah, it's a big achievement at the moment that we are able to provide Migrolino customers specific offers that fit to their buying behavior.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've reached the end of this session. I want to thank Sebastian, Sabine, and Adrian for being here today. It's been great, and I'm sure from their own areas, Sabine through the academic way, Sebastian as retailer, and Adrian as a supplier will continue to bring us forward as an industry. This is a key topic, and I'm sure there'll be many more discussions to come around connectivity, smart AI, forecourts and shops as we go forward, and we'll continue to do so at PetrolPlaza. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.